Welcome. This video is an introduction to essential settings on your digital camera. You'll need to be familiar with all the following settings to complete assignments in this class. I'll be demonstrating on a Canon camera, but all these settings can be found on the camera you may be using. Make sure you always have your user manual available. The purpose of this video is to locate these items. Further explanation on creative effects based on using these controls and settings will be found in other videos related to this course. Let's start with the lens. The zoom ring allows us to change the focal length of the lens. Lower settings indicate a wide angle setting. Higher numbers indicate a more telephoto setting. On the side of the lens, we can choose between autofocus and manual focus. When we choose manual focus, we are able to turn the focus ring. Below that is a stabilizer on-off setting. Image stabilizer should be set in the on position. Removing the lens cap as follows. Moving to the top of the camera, shutter release also controls LCD on-off, also controls focus when in autofocus mode. Control dial allows us to change aperture and shutter speed, also controls navigation in the LCD panel. ISO setting, we'll get to that in a moment when we make changes in our settings menu. On-off switch, exposure mode dial. In this course will be set in manual mode M. Also available are aperture value, allowing you to choose an aperture and the camera chooses shutter speed. Time value allows you to choose the shutter speed and the camera determines the aperture. Program mode, basically the camera makes all the choices for you. Keep it in manual mode. Moving to the back of the camera, we have a menu button. Allows us to get to many choices in the menu settings. Display turns the display of the LCD on and off. We have an aperture value button, AV. Pressing that in conjunction with turning the control dial allows us to change the aperture setting. Taking our finger off of that and just moving the control dial allows us to change the shutter speed. If we press the ISO button on the top of the camera, we are now able to choose ISO, which is your chip sensitivity. It's set at 400, which is where it should be set for the scope of this course. Next we'll get to white balance. Clicking that allows us to set our camera on auto white balance. Other more specific settings are available. Finally, we're going to get to the drive mode. We're in single shooting mode, which is where you will be most of the time. Self timer allows you to set the self timer for 2 seconds. This will be required when shooting on a tripod. If you do not have a remote shutter release cable, you'll need to use the self timer when on a tripod. Additionally, on the back of the camera you'll find a trash can to get rid of images that you no longer want. Also, you can review images that you've already shot. The LCD indicates current settings: shutter speed, aperture, ISO, exposure mode, light meter settings, auto white balance, file size we'll get to in a moment, drive mode, battery life, and image count. More important settings can be gotten to by pressing the menu button. By rotating the control dial, we'll get to our first group, quality settings, which is the type of file and quality of file. I'm going to depress the set button. I want to make sure it's set on L for large. Other settings are smaller files and not appropriate for this course. Raw files are for more advanced courses. I'll click set. I'll turn my control dial to our next group of settings, and we want to check color space. I'll click set to get into there. It should be set on Adobe RGB. sRGB being a smaller color space, and regardless of the fact that we're shooting in black and white, we want to be set on Adobe RGB. And the next important setting here is picture style. We want to make sure that we're set on monochrome. There's various other color settings. In this class, it's going to be monochrome. Click the set button, and we are all set there. Finally, on the side of the camera, you'll find your storage card. On the other side, you'll find ports for various connections to your computer and or TV and or microphone, although most of these cameras have built-in microphones. On the bottom, you'll find your battery compartment. Make sure you keep your battery charged up. And finally, I'd like to just say that these cameras have many other features not related to this course. Feel free to experiment. Remember, it's not what you look at, it's what you see.